but I'm delighted to be here. I want to introduce my wife, who's came in and is sitting over here, my wife, Carol. She and I will be celebrating our 55th anniversary within a week or so, February 1st, so delighted. But I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you. The campaign has certainly heated up. The debates last night were very interesting and sometimes distracting, but overall I thought the debate went quite well. And people ask me quite frequently, how'd the debate go? And I said, compared to what? It always can be better, and it could be worse as well. But basically, over the years, literally, of being involved in debates have always been very helpful in promoting what I've been talking about on sound economic policy, a changed foreign policy, and especially an emphasis on monetary policy, which was mentioned in the introduction. So this to me has always been encouraging because we get so many new supporters once we present our case for what we need to do. Now, generally speaking, my views are different in reality than the other candidates because although the rhetoric might not be extremely different, in reality it is different because so often we have candidates that will talk about some changes but basically still support the status quo. My position is that we have to do a lot more. The status quo today is too much ignoring the Constitution. People ask me, how did we get into this trouble and what do we have to do? I don't think that question is difficult to answer. We've gotten into this trouble because we've avoided following the Constitution. It shouldn't be difficult to get out of trouble by just having only people in Washington who obey the Constitution. That's what I think we ought to do. But it's across the board. It's a general lackadaisical attitude about following the Constitution. But it also reflects an educational system that over many, many decades have taught generations of Americans that the Constitution is not to be a rigid document. You know, that's sort of like saying the Bill of Rights is not a rigid document, or the Ten Commandments are not a rigid set of rules. So since we got careless with this, the document doesn't mean a whole lot. So when it comes to monetary policy, the founders of this country were explicit about protecting against inflation because they had suffered through the inflation of the continental dollar. So they put it in there that only gold and silver could be legal tender. You couldn't have a central bank and you couldn't print money. But look at where we are. And we didn't change the Constitution. So if events have changed and they think that central banking, just creating money out of thin air, is a good, sound economic system, to do it, the people of this country should have changed the Constitution. If we as a people wanted the federal government to take over and control education, then the Constitution should have changed because there is no authority for the federal government to be running education. Therefore, we don't need the Department of Education. And you can continue to go down the list. Take, for instance, the executive branch of government. Have you ever noticed they write a lot of regulations? And actually, they shouldn't write any regulations. Congress pass laws like they do with dealing with the environment and EPA, and then they write regulations and they go way off on tangents, and the Congress never reins them in. But when you write a regulation, you're writing a law, and that's the executive branch doing what only the legislative branch is supposed to be doing. And we need to challenge this someday. We don't need the federal government or the executive branch writing legislation, but we shouldn't be allowing the right legislation through executive orders or signing statements or following the laws written by the United Nations. We need to adhere to the rules. But we've gotten careless in another area that I think is so important because it's contributed so much to our financial crisis and the ongoing activities overseas and the overseas spending. That the founders, one of the reasons we fought the revolution was the encroachment of the military on the privacy of the colonists, where the military would come into the homes and occupy the homes and tax the people for fighting wars. And they resented the fact that the king could take the people to war as well as tax the people to fight these wars. So it was explicit in the Constitution that the president just can't get up and go to war. And we've lost that just about completely, and both parties have been derelict in this. We go to war now at the president's insistence. Does he come to the Congress, especially in this with this recent administration? Has he come to the Congress to get involved in Libya and these various countries, and now in Syria, and thinking about going on into Iran? Does he come and get, if we have to go to war, does he come and get a declaration of war? No, they just go and do it. I don't think that's right. I think we should declare war if we have to go to war. This means we would go to war more rarely, and if we did go to war, we would win them instead of stagnating and being involved for 10 years. But another insult, should be an insult at least to all Americans, is having our presidents go to war under a UN banner or NATO and not even consult with the Congress. We need to change that, obviously. A lot of times our debates will be designed to either talk about economic policy or social policy or foreign policy. Obviously, last night there was no emphasis on foreign policy. But if you're truly interested in economic policy, you can't not talk about foreign policy. In the last 10 years, our foreign wars have contributed $4 trillion worth of debt, and that is money out of our economy. War, even when it's necessary, is always a drain on the economy. But war, especially when they linger and you spend money, it's a real insult to the economy here at home. So this $4 trillion that was spent running up debt, which had nothing to do with our national defense or national security. As a matter of fact, I believe it undermined our national security and defense by getting involved. But $4 trillion is a great burden, and the crisis that we're facing economically today is a debt crisis. They talk about what kind of programs that we're going to design to stimulate the economy and take care of the unemployed, but very rarely are they addressing the subject in a serious manner about the real problem, and that is debt, the debt burden, because all our productivity now can barely pay to finance our debt. If you think of all that we owe the $16 trillion, and just think this week the national debt was raised by $1.2 trillion, and it was done by the president, and the Congress feebly tries to prevent that from happening, but it still happens because it's on autopilot now. And our country isn't even productive enough to finance the debt. But how do we get away with it? Well, we still live with this fiction that the world will forever trust us to print the right amount of dollars, that the dollar will always maintain value, and that we can print our way out and finance all the debt. But already we are suffering severely from that, even though it is still being propped up and people are still taking our dollars. But since 1971, when we lost the last link to gold, our dollar has lost 85% of its value. So if you happen to be an old-fashioned person and you think that I don't want to speculate in the stock market, saving money and being frugal was actually at one time thought to be a good thing. So if a person followed that and wanted to play it safe and had a CD, they can't even keep up with the depreciation of the money. What if they wanted to start saving in 1971 and now they want to retire? Well, they've lost. Depending on how much money they put in each year. But theoretically, if you put all your money away in 1971 and you put $100,000 away, you'd have $15,000 of purchasing power. So the system we have is very, very destructive to the very positive things that we need in the economy. Our problem basically is that we don't follow the rules of the marketplace. True capital comes from savings, but we don't save. We substitute savings with a printing press run by the Federal Reserve. They just create money out of thin air, and as long As long as people accept the dollars, we're going to continue to do that, but they're going to accept them a lot less. But the problems we face economically are international. The dollar is the reserve standard of the world. We're getting away with still exporting our dollars. That's our biggest export. And we get goods and services at a cheaper rate. But eventually, the world will reject the paper money because you can't. Our credit has been downgraded. France's credit has been downgraded. Europe's in a mess. The French or the Spanish are in a mess. The Greeks are in a mess. And everybody is, all they're doing is scurrying around every single day. Like today, there's another plan. How are we going to take care of the Greek debt? Well, when the debt gets this big, there's only one way that you resolve it and you get back to growth again. The debt has to be liquidated. But instead of liquidating, what they do is the debt that the sovereign nations and the big banks run up, they take the debt and they transfer it to us. The people have to end up owning this debt. This is why Wall Street still thrives. They get the bailouts, the people who had made the money when the bubble was forming. The middle class is shrinking. Productivity is shrinking. People are losing their jobs and they're losing their houses. So we have to change that whole attitude. Debt has to be liquidated and the malinvestment has to be removed. But for 4 years now, we have been propping it up, and that's why we're not having true economic growth again. But there's nothing we can do in politics, even a president, to promote these views. The people have to understand a very important issue. What should the role of government be? And this is what the founders fought the revolution about. They decided the role of the king was wrong. They had a revolution. They wrote a document, and the role of the federal government was designed to protect our liberties. No more complicated than that. It is the purpose of the federal government to provide for a strong national defense and protect our liberties. That is what we're supposed to do. Today that has evolved, and John Adams warned if it ever evolves from a republic to a pure democracy, eventually society would murder itself. So in many ways, we're murdering ourselves by our spending and our extension of our troops around the world. And now we still accept this notion, which has to be challenged. Entitlements are not rights. You have a right to your life and your liberty and your property, but not entitled. Nobody's entitled to somebody else's effort. So as long as that exists, a token change in Washington won't make the difference. The government we have in Washington is a reflection of the people's attitude. But the good news is the people's attitude is now changing significantly. Even those who are on the receiving end of the entitlement system are very frightened because they know that the Treasury is bare. And the people who have been paying the bills, they're sick and tired of paying the bills. And this is why we're going to have change. And the people are starting to send this message. I am very encouraged, especially when I travel around the country and talk to the next generation. They know what's coming. They know what is necessary. They know what a proper national defense policy is and a foreign policy. They know what a proper monetary policy is. They know that the president nor the Congress is supposed to run the economy. The people are supposed to run the economy, and the government is supposed to get out of the way. And this freedom movement has also gained the support of those who know that government rules and laws cannot mold personal behavior. And economic liberty and personal liberty is one and the same. And that is what we have to protect. That's the responsibility of the federal government. And I'll tell you what, I'm very optimistic on the long run. On the short run, we still have a lot of work to do. And there will be a significant event coming up soon, I think it's tomorrow, that may send a message to this country that we want less government, we want more freedom. Thank you very much.
So are there more important things to talk about?
They're important.
How would you build relationship with Russia if you liked it?
Talk to them, deal with them, trade with them, like we should be doing with Cuba.
Congressman Paul, could you explain to the other candidates why means testing is such a bad idea?
Media room.
Can't do that in a short.
Cannot come back stage. Media room.
Sorry about that. That's a little hard to get through that crowd of media there. Let's go ahead and continue, and I'm going to give our next speaker a little time.